I know this may seem petty, but one of the things I wanted to do after Democrats brutally beat Republicans down in Tuesday's elections was select a bunch of moments and tweets and compile them and bask in the misery of despairing Republican politicians and conservative commentators together, you and I, in a bonding exercise. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. All right, folks, again, I know it's petty. I understand that. But I also believe in a diversity of tactics and a diversity of motivations. I do believe in a thing called righteous anger. The Republican Party, whether we like it or not, is energized very much by destructive, unrighteous anger, right? It's okay to celebrate when things happen like they did on Tuesday, in which this anti-democratic, this authoritarian, bad faith cult of personality that wants to lead this country into utter ruin is so resoundingly rejected at the ballot box. It's okay to celebrate that. As a matter of fact, I think it's good for you and I and others to celebrate that because it has a material impact on our lives and the lives of our loved ones and future generations. It's okay to do it. So with that in mind, pop the popcorn, pop the champagne, and let's bask in some of these moments, starting with Vivek Ramaswamy, actually from the day after the election during the third primary debate. This is what he had to say.
We've become a party of losers at the end of the day. It was a cancer to the Republican establishment. Let's speak the truth. I mean, since Ronna McDaniel took over as chairwoman of the RNC in 2017, we have lost 2018, 2020, 2022, no red wave that never came. We got trounced last night in 2023. And I think
so there is a whole back and forth that happened at that third primary debate between Ronna McDaniel, the chairwoman of the Republican National Committee, and Vivek Ramaswamy, which merits its own video, so I don't want to go into too much more than that. But suffice it to say, everything is right. The Republican Party has become the party of losers, particularly, again, with its elected representatives and its conservative thought leaders. They are leading their constituency down a path of ruin. Republican policies do nothing for nobody. There's no benefit whatsoever unless you belong to a very small group of multi-millionaires and billionaires. This is from Newsmax, I think the night of the election or the very next day, discussing it.
As far as, it does seem like the Republican Party generally has a real problem with winning. It certainly was in the midterms here and now in this one as well. And you wonder, do we have the right people in place to be putting the messaging together to the people that are supposed to be there to get the early vote out, to do these jobs? You wonder about the RNC. Do we have the right people running the show? Because we're not doing something right. I think that's very obvious. As far as,
So, I mean, just, again, utterly said. I mean, I will say the Republican National Committee, they do play a role with this, certainly at, in major federal elections, things like that, senators for states, not state senators. Now, a lot of these down ballot races, not so much, but there's no question that under Ronna McDaniel's stewardship, the RNC has a loser track record. But Donald Trump is also the leader of the party, too. And that's the elephant in the room that nobody wants to address. Under his stewardship, it's not just Ronna McDaniel's at the head of the party. She's a major player in the party in terms of, again, the strategy and the finances involving getting people reelected. But Donald Trump outranks even her. He's the head of the party. And under his stewardship, the Republican Party hasn't done so well. I've got two clips from Laura Ingraham as well doing her election postmortem.
No getting around it. Republicans were once again disappointed last night. Big weed and big abortion won in Ohio. The GOP lost its dream of taking control of the Virginia State House, and the incumbent Democrat in Kentucky, Andy Beshear, he won. Now, naturally, Democrats are leaping to the conclusion that Biden emerges as Superman.
Now, that is premature. I understand that there are some people out there saying that this is a repudiation of the polls. Not necessarily. It's entirely possible for President Biden to not be faring so well at the moment. I do think that can change. I do think it should change. But these two things are not mutually exclusive. It's possible for right now President Biden to be a weak electoral candidate and for the Democratic Party as a whole, as a brand, to be very, very strong compared to the alternative. This is another clip from Laura Ingram's show.
Election day, the issue was no longer about protecting our kids. It was about keeping Nazis off the school board. Again, it's time to recognize that the suburbs are increasingly left-leaning on the cultural issues. Plus, the Democrats are able to outraise, outspend, and better frame these issues than Republicans.
It helps when we have facts on our side, but Laura, I mean, don't despair too hard. I mean, Republicans have historically been on issues they should not be leading on, like the economy, for example. Democrats are consistently better stewards of the economy by far than Republicans, and yet the perception is the exact opposite. So it's not like Republicans are incapable of correctly framing an issue, but it does seem like when it comes to wanting to control people and control women, and yes, put Nazis on school boards, they just have this like absolute instinct to do the worst possible thing. Now, this one is not so much a clip. It's a tweet from Ben Shapiro. Got to be honest, getting tired of all the pseudo winning. The truth is that Virginia Republicans did outperform in certain ways last night. Broadly speaking, gang, the state is very purplish, and Republicans won a seat with a Biden +9. But that's not going to carry the state legislature, gang, unless there is a GOP semi-wave. With that said, Republican messaging on abortion on a state-by-state level is going to have to change. Being pragmatic about political reality does not mean abandoning the good and true. Achieving more pro-life wins requires, winning. So he's obviously not happy about the outcome. You have Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk saying lots of work to do, make a year from today better, or else the country is in big trouble. Not nearly as big of trouble as it would be if Republicans won, of course, being the vastly inferior governing party. And then he said this at the very end: the postmortem will happen. Abortion /RNC/RGA establishment versus base, etc. One thing is immediately clear: we're getting crushed on fundraising. And we discussed this in previous videos with respect to the presidential campaign. President Biden has certain, again, disadvantages. I'm not going to ignore the polling. I know a lot of you in the comment section are upset because I gave the polling the time of day. But generally speaking, even now, polling is relatively reliable. And I'm just not going to ignore a potential canary in the coal mine and stick my head in the sand. I think Joe Biden has been, for the most part, a very good president. I think he has governed much more progressively than many of us intended. And if it's a choice between him and a Republican in 2024, I want Joe Biden to win. Absolutely. There's no question. But having said all that, one of Biden's advantages is fundraising. I mean, he has consistently crushed Republican fundraising, including Donald Trump. And we see it trickle down in terms of, down ballot as well. The ground game and the fundraising of the Democratic Party has just been chef's kiss. It's been phenomenal. And thank God for that. The last thing I'll do is play this clip. It's a bit spicy, or uses spicy language, which is why I kept it at the end. This is Megyn Kelly. She is, of course, a former Fox News commentator. She was on like ABC or NBC for a brief stint. She does her own stuff on YouTube. She's a dishonest, right-wing ideologue. She's not the worst, but she's still pretty bad. She is fed up with Tuesday's results, and mind you, just note the language, because I was kind of shocked that she, of all people, dropped this particular bomb, but she did. And so let's play this clip and we'll unpack it.
They are too extreme for the voters. That's irrespective of how any of us may feel on the life choice issue. They are too extreme for the voters, even in states like Kentucky. And they're going to keep losing unless they come to that realization. This is going to be a gradual fight that they're going to have to win bit by bit. They cannot win by saying no abortions and no exceptions. It's a fucking loser.
Well said, Megan. The Republican Party is too extreme, not just on abortion, but on most other issues. Climate change. My God, Vivek Ramaswamy in the first or second presidential debate was like, basically, if it's flammable, burn it, drill it, frack it, burn it, anything. They're extreme on voting rights, on all kinds of civil liberties. It's just an extreme party. It's a party that, they want to pretend that the Democratic Party is driven by the extremes, but they're really not. I mean, now, to his credit, President Biden has worked much more cooperatively with progressives. He has not alienated them for the most part, which is good. Some of the best Biden accomplishments have come from his influence, his ability to be influenced, rather, by progressives in Congress and in the Senate. But other than that, the Democratic Party is still relatively moderate. The Republican Party, on the other hand, my God, again, if you want to draw a circle between the crazy people in the Republican Party and the moderate people in the Republican Party, it's basically a circle. Because, again, there's the relationship between their crazies and their elected representatives is 1-to-1. But yeah, so I don't know if we're going to do another video on the Tuesday elections. There's actually more to unpack. I feel like Virginia, what happened in Virginia merits its own video. But You had the third primary debates. You have a lot of things going on in the world. President Biden gave a great speech today in front of union workers, I believe. So we're probably going to let it go here. So I wanted us to bask in the moment, right? These terrible, awful, morally despicable Republican politicians and their surrogates in the mainstream and alternate media, these just terrible people with terrible views, are really upset about what happened Tuesday, which means you and I should be very, very happy. Let me know what you think in the comments.